Okay, we will start the recording from here. Let me share my screen first. Hey folks, this is Ricardo, and today I'll present you the TCP for data centers. Before we dig into details, first we would like to know what is a data center. A data center is a faculty housing many networked computers that work together to process, store, and share data. It also refers to a physical location in which computers are networked together in order to improve usability and reduce costs related to storage, bandwidth, and other networking components. In addition, data center networks have some special features such as many-to-one communication pattern with high bandwidth, low latency, auto-scaling, shadow buffer switches, and multi-routed tree topology. So you may want to ask, why is there a need to resync TCP for data centers? This is because that the performance of TCP is not satisfactory in data center networks due to its special features we discussed in the previous slide. And the reduction in performance is mainly caused by issues known as TCP incast, TCP outcast, and latency. Next, we'll briefly introduce what these issues are. First, we'll talk about the TCP incast. It is a catastrophic throughput collapse that occurs when a large number of servers send data simultaneously to a single receiver with high bandwidth and low round-trip time. Generally speaking, the client sends various synchronized data requests, and each server stores a fragment of the data block requested by the client. All the servers take approximately the same amount of time for sending the requested data to the client, which results in the overflow of buffers at the bottleneck link. And this leads to a large amount of packet losses and timeouts. There are three types of timeouts. The first one is LTTO, stands for loss of packets from the tail of data blocks timeout. And LHTO stands for loss of packets from the head of data blocks timeout. And the last one is LRTO, stands for the loss of retransmitted packets timeout. And these timeouts can reduce the throughput by roughly 90%. So what does each of these timeouts mean? We'll use the figure on the left as an example of LTTO. As you can see, consider the sender sends 5 packets using the congestion window size of 5. Among those, the packets 3 and 4 are lost, and the sender will not receive 3 duplex for triggering fast retransmission for recovering the lost packets 3 and 4, since only 1 packet left from the end of the life of TCP flow. As a result, the sender needs to wait for the expiration of timeouts. Such situation is Such situation is not unavoidable in data center networks. We'll use the figure in the video as an example of LHTO. If all packets from a data block are dropped, the receiver cannot send any acknowledgements for the transmitted data. As a result, the TCP sender can detect a packet loss after the long idle period of the expiration of the retransmission timer. Usually in data center networks, these types of timeouts happen due to large summation and big variance of the initial size of CW window when the number of senders becomes large. That is, some senders finish their transmissions That is, some senders finish their transmissions earlier than others and needs to wait for other senders to finish their transmissions. As a result, the senders without finishing data transmission have large send window size. On the next data block transmissions, all the senders inject packets using their whole windows to the small switch buffer, which usually causes loss of packet loss. If a flow losses its whole window, they will enter a timeout period. We'll use the last figure as an example of LRTO. When the TCP sender detects a packet loss via TCP loss detection mechanism, in this case, In this case, packet 1 is lost. It transmits the lost packet immediately as shown in the figure. However, if the retransmitted packet is lost again, the sender needs to wait until the expiration of retransmission timer due to insufficient duplex. The loss of retransmissions is not rare in data center networks. Next, we'll introduce TCP outcast. This happens when a large and small set of flows share the same bottleneck link with multi-rooted tree topology. The throughput of TCPs with small set of flows obtain lower throughput than TCPs with large set of flows, which will lead to severe unfairness. This is also known as the port blackout problem. It means that several input ports compete for one output port, and some of the packets get dropped when the queue in the output port becomes full. In this case, some input ports suffer from blackouts and degrade the throughput. Another issue is latency. So data center networks carry two types of TCP flows. One is short-lived flows, which is around 2 kilobytes, and they are latency sensitive. And it also carries long-lived flows, which is around 100 megabytes, and they are latency insensitive. When the long and short flows share the same bottleneck queue, the short flows experience increased latency due to the queue built up by long flows. Also, the result is that a large number of packet drops and frequent retransmissions. In data center networks, the majority of traffic is bursty, and hence the packets of short-lived TCP flows get dropped frequently. There are also issues like delay ACK and single pass TCP, but we will not focus on those. So how do we solve these issues? We will first propose some solutions to the TCP incast. The solutions can be identified as two groups. One is window-based solution. It controls incoming traffic by adjusting congestion or receiving window in order to avoid switch buffer overflow and packet losses. Window-based solutions generally necessitate enhancements to existing TCP protocol. The examples are DCTCP, stands for Data Center TCP, and TDC-TCP, DCTCP. The last two are the modified versions of DCTCP. Another group of solutions is recovery-based solution. It mainly focuses on reducing impact after packet losses. And there's an example known as GIP, stands for Guarantee Important Packets, and Plato, which is a packet labeling scheme. In this case, we will discuss DCTCP in details. Before we go through DCTCP, we will first understand the challenges in data center networks. We will first describe a common application structure named partition and aggregate that motivates why latency is a critical metric in data centers. So what is partition and aggregate? It means that requests from higher layers of application are broken into pieces and farmed out to workers in lower layers. The responses of these workers are aggregated to produce a result, and these workers usually have a tight deadline. Many applications have a multi-layer partition and aggregate pattern workflow with lags at one layer delaying the initiation of others. Further, answering a request may require iteratively invoking the pattern, with an aggregator making several requests to the workers below it to prepare a response. And typically it needs 1 to 4 iterations. The measurement reveals that 99.91% of traffic in the data center is TCP traffic. And the traffic mainly consists of bursty query traffic, which is around 2 kilobytes to 20 kilobytes in size, and delay-sensitive short messages, which is about 100 kilobytes to 1 megabyte, and also throughput-sensitive long flows, which is usually 1 megabytes to 100 megabytes. So why are there performance issues with this mix of flows with original TCP in data center network? We'll first discuss the ways flows interact with the switches that carry the traffic. In a shallow buffer switch, packets arrive on the interface are stored into a high-speed, multi-ported memory shared by all the interfaces. Memory from the shared pool is dynamically allocated to a packet. If a packet must be queued for an outgoing interface, but the interface has hit its maximum memory allocation or the shared pool itself is depleted, then the packet is dropped. The shallow packet buffers causes three specific performance impairments. The first one is incast. It happens when there is a burst of short flows on the same interface of a switch over a short period of time. The packet may exhaust either the switch memory or the maximum permitted buffer for the interface, resulting in packet losses. The next is queue buildup. It means that long-lived greedy TCP flows will cause the length of bottleneck queue to grow until packets are dropped. When mix of long and short flows traverse the same queue, packet loss on the short flows can cause incast problems. And even when no packets are lost, the short flows experience increased latency as they are in queue behind packets from the large flows. The last one is buffer pressure. This happens because the long greedy TCP flows build up queues on their interfaces. Since buffer space is a shared resource, and the queue buildup reduces the amount of buffer space available to absorb bursts of traffic from partition and aggregate traffic. You may have doubts like, why don't we just modify the original TCP to solve these issues? Like, why doesn't it work this way? Actually, researchers have tried to do so in the past. They have shown that lowering the retransmit timeout mean to 1 milliseconds and use high-resolution retransmission timers alleviates the impact of incast-induced timeouts. But this does not prevent the queue buildup. So here comes the DC-TCP. It is designed to meet the requirements of such a diverse mix of short and long flows. It's also designed to achieve high burst tolerance, low latency, and high throughput with commodity shallow buffer switches. The DC-TCP algorithm itself is actually very simple. The first step is simple marking at the switch. An arriving packet is marked with the congestion experience code point if the queue occupancy is greater than K, which is a threshold, upon its arrival. This scheme ensures that sources are quickly notified of the queue overshoot. The second step is an echo at the receiver. The TCP receiver acts every packet, setting the ECO echo flag if and only if the packet has a marked C code point. The third step is controller at the sender. The sender maintains an estimate of the fraction of packets that are marked, called alpha, which is updated once per RTT by the following formula. This is the formula, where F is the fraction of packets that were marked in the last window of data, and G is ranged from 0 to 1 as the weight given to new samples against the past in the estimation of alpha. In responses to a marked ACK, DC-TCP adjusts its window size with the following formula. When alpha is low, indicating low congestion, CWND slightly reduces its size. And when alpha is high, indicating high congestion, CWND reduces to half, just like TCP. Designers of DC-TCP analyze its performance with several experiments. The first one is incast impairment, and the experiment setup is listed below. So there are 41 machines are connected to the Triumph switch with 1 Gbps link. For this one experiment, the dynamic memory allocation policy in the switch was replaced with a static allocation of 100 packets to each port. One machine access the client and others access service. The client requests queries about 1 MB divided by n bytes from n different servers. And each server responds immediately with the requested amount of data. The client waits until it receives all the responses and then issues another similar query. This is repeated for 1,000 times. The experiment is also carried out for both TCP and DC-TCP, and with two timeout values, the default 300 milliseconds and 10 milliseconds. Figure on the left shows the mean query completion time. DCTSP performance much better than both TCP variants, eventually converging to a equivalent performance as the incast degree increases. Figure on the right shows the fraction of queries that suffer at least one timeout. Another experiment uses the dynamic buffer allocation algorithm of switches, and timeout is set to 10 milliseconds because of TCP's poor performance with a timeout of 300 milliseconds. As shown in the figure, DCTSP no longer suffers incast timeouts, even when the number of servers grows to 40. On the other hand, TCP continues to suffer from incast timeouts, although the dynamic buffering algorithm mitigates the impact. The final experiment of incast impairment is described below. The experiment uses the same setup as before, except that all 41 machines participate. Each machine requests 25 kilobytes of data from the remaining 40 machines, and the total is 1 megabyte of data. The CDF of the response time is shown below. We see that DCTSP keeps the demand on buffer space low enough that the dynamic buffer is able to cover all requests for memory, and DCTSP suffers no timeouts at all. TCP, on the other hand, performs poorly because over 55% of the queries suffer from at least one timeout. There is also an experiment on queue buildup impairment, and the experiment setup is described below. To measure DCTSP's impact on its impairment, we connect 4 machines to Triumph switch with 1 Gbps links. One machine is a receiver and the other 3 are senders. We start one big TCP flow each from 2 senders to the receiver. The receiver then requests 20 kilobytes chunks of data from the third sender. The sender responds immediately, and the receiver sends the next request as soon as it finishes receiving data. All communications is over long-lived connections, so there's no three-way handshake for each request. As you can see, the figure below shows the CDF of request completion times for 1,020 kilobytes transfers. DCTSP's completion time, with a median delay of less than 1 milliseconds, is much lower than the TCP completion time, with a median delay about 19 milliseconds. No flows suffer timeouts in this scenario. Overall, DCTSP achieves both high throughput and low latency while providing high burst tolerance. In trade-off, compared to TCP, DCTSP has a longer convergence time, meaning the time required for a new flow to grab its share of bandwidth from an existing flow with a large window size. But this is not very significant because in data center, round trip times are only a few hundred microseconds, which is 2 orders of magnitude less than RTTs in the internet. And simulations show that the convergence time for this TCP is on the order of 20 to 30 milliseconds at 1 Gbps and 80 to 150 milliseconds at 10 Gbps, which is a factor of 2 to 3 more than TCP. DCTSP also have other disadvantages that when the number of flows is relatively large, DCTSP cannot deal with the TCP incast problem anymore, and the throughput falls back to the conventional TCP. In addition, DCTSP requires the modification of ECN settings at the switches, as well as changes in end servers. We'll quickly scan through GIP, known as Guarantee Important Packet. It makes TCP aware of boundaries of the striping units and reduces the size of congestion window of each flow at the start of each stripe, as well as redundantly transmitting the last packet of each stripe unit. GIP modified TCP at the sender side. Since the timeout is the root cause of TCP incast issue, GIP is implemented to avoid 2 timeouts. One is full window losses, which is LHTO, and the other one is lack of duplex, which is LTTO. It reduces the initial congestion window of each sender at the head of the stripe unit for avoiding full window loss. Also, GIP redundantly redundantly transmits the last packet of a stripe unit for avoiding the timeouts due to insufficient duplex. One thing to mention is that this TCP also contributes to solve the TCP outcast problems that ensure fairness to all hosts, regardless of small or large flows. Solutions to latency are mainly divided into two categories. One is deadline-aware protocols, and the examples are the following protocols. Note that reducing the flow completion time while determining deadlines for providing guaranteed transmission rate is a challenging task, as it varies with load, network congestion. As a result, the deadline-aware protocols do not necessarily minimize the flow completion time. The other category is ECM mechanism required protocols, which needs switch support. And we will not go through these protocols in details. In conclusion, TCP is challenged to meet the requirements of applications, and many solutions proposed have trade-offs in their design considerations, and many require additional configurations in switches or in hosts to achieve their goals. As you know, there's no free lunch in the world. And that completes my presentation. Thank you for listening and have a good rest of the day.